What is up, everybody? Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joel Algie. Super excited today. We've got another great guest, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things that are going on right now. And if you guys are watching this on video and you see a little reflection as well, I do have the England game on right now because I'm a big fan of England. So if you notice at one point I get mad, it's because England are losing, but I won't reveal the score. Well, you guys, by the time this comes out, you'll know whether or not England made it through. But anyway, welcome to Devyn Mikell from QualiFI. He's the president over there. Devyn, why don't you give a quick pitch on what QualiFI does, and would love to know what you're up to over there.
Yeah, absolutely. In simplest form, QualiFI is the screening platform for high volume recruiting. We help take candidates from first interview, that phone screen, through final interview, including scheduling and live video with our customers. So
awesome.
Servicing anything from few hires a month, whatever that high volume for a team of one, to hundreds for big teams.
And some of your clients, like what types of clients do you typically work with?
Yeah, we have a big foothold with healthcare, so working with some of the biggest healthcare companies in the country, and then retail as well, with companies that hire people that you don't even know they work for that company, or just name brands that you would think of. So if you've been to some like Verizon stores, we help staff some of that. To if you're going into the emergency room, we help staff that too. So it could be any of the two.
Yeah, and look, I know that healthcare right now, I mean, it is hard to find talent, to hire talent. It is a real struggle. So I'm sure your clients are experiencing that as well, and a lot of those pains.
Oh yeah, there's one thing that's true of every healthcare client I talk to is the same thing, which is the shortage is real.
Yeah,
time is of the essence, and patients are waiting on good quality candidates. So
are they seeing more people go into healthcare right now? Like, what's the trend? Are more younger people like kind of getting into like nursing and healthcare in general, or is it just are they kind of continuing
I think it's
to see
going the opposite direction?
Oh, really?
From what I hear from like the bigger co's is like there's a more. I've heard this from 3 separate big hospital firms, which is more of an emphasis over like the next 10 years on educating the workforce so that they can create their own talent. I think that's like the next wave, because if the shortage isn't going to slow down, right? So nursing shortage is going to stay. Then you got to create nurses, and that's new to everyone. Like it used to be there, and now they're not. And so I think COVID scared them off, rightfully so. Now they're like, hey, we got to build like an education wing of our business, which is totally new for talent, but it's going to be a big shift over the next 10 years.
What about, and I know we're getting on like a healthcare tangent here, but what about like with like AI? Are they looking to like supplement some of those jobs with AI, or is that something that's kind of too risky? What are your thoughts with that?
I haven't heard anything about AI actually in like the workforce piece. I've heard it in like the talent acquisition side, but like when you're talking about the actual work, I haven't heard anything there beyond like, the administrative side. So I don't think we'll have any like intelligence doing your actual operations anytime soon. Now, I could be wrong. I could be a naysayer, but I'm not going to that hospital. I know that much.
Hello, I am Nurse Joel here to help you. Can you type the prompt in of how you're feeling? Although I feel like that could be, I do that anyway with Google, but and somehow every time I go in, I know exactly what's wrong with me, or at least I think I do, and then I'm completely wrong. But well, let's get into this. So for anyone who is listening or is new to the show, one of the things I like to do is I just like to take a look at what's trending on social media, what's trending in the news, and then kind of react to it and just kind of get my take, my guest take on what's going on as well. So I thought we would start. All right. So the first news that we have is from one of my former employers, I should say. I think this one is pretty funny here, actually. And you might have seen this in the news, but Wells Fargo has fired some mouse jigglers. I didn't know that was a term until it was on TikTok. But mouse jigglers. So mouse jigglers. The irony of this too is there's TikTok has TikTok Shop. I had a TikTok that popped up, and it was this guy who was like totally selling mouse jigglers. Yeah, you getting commission for mouse jigglers, and he's like, if you don't want to get caught, but maybe he hasn't seen this. But basically, Wells Fargo fired mouse jigglers, and they're taking aim at fake work and other trends. And so it basically just says that For anyone who isn't watching the video, Wells Fargo fired a dozen employees last month after an internal investigation revealed that workers were engaged in unethical workplace practices. The irony there is Wells Fargo is probably one of the most unethical banks ever. And I know I know that because of some of the stuff they've done when I worked there. But now they're not allowing unethical work, especially it means stealing time away. But then it says at the end of the article, this is not the first time the third biggest bank in the United States employees have come under scrutiny. In 2016, Wells Fargo, I was involved in this, not opening accounts, but I was involved in one of the districts that a lot of people were opening unauthorized savings and checking accounts to reach sales goals. So first of all, I mean, what are your thoughts with this whole, what are your thoughts with people, number one, who are doing stuff like this to kind of remain productive? And then I guess, is this just a trend that we're seeing with remote work where people are just not wanting to work, or they're seeing this as a way to get away with not working? Like, what are your thoughts with this?
So my gut here, I'm not super mad about the people. And I'll come back to that piece. Don't let me forget that part. But anyways, I think it's bad. Like, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I think mouse jiggling, which I can't even take myself seriously saying it out loud, not great. Not a great look. Especially not a great look to get caught. But I do think it's a result of remote work. And I won't say I'm against remote work, but I'm not like for it gung-ho. Like, I'm not all about it. Not because of these reasons, but like this is a byproduct of it. Like, at the end of the day, if you work from home, home is comfortable. Home is likely where you have an Xbox, a child,
an England game,
an England game, right? You have a lot of things that could take your attention, and or simply put, like, you have things you want to do. So your friend has a day off and you want to go take the day off with them. Remote work makes that way easier. Like, way easier to not get caught basically stealing time. So I do blame remote work in a way, but at the same time, like what I was saying is, like, I'm not super mad at these people that got caught. To me, like, if your work is done and it was done well,
exactly.
Like, why are we forcing people to be on an 8-hour shift to do what could be done in maybe 3 hours, maybe, Yeah. So maybe they're just like, hey, I did my work. I did it really well at a high level. And I just think it's dumb that I'm having to sit here and roll through emails for 5 more hours. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Look, that was one of the things that I was thinking about, or I've been thinking about a lot, whether or not, I mean, it's a couple things. Like, are people just that unengaged with the work that they're doing that they're at this point where they could just set the mouse jiggler for 45 minutes and go do something else? Or to your point, like, they're done with the work they need to get done. But to me, it's just it's like this shift in mentality in work where I think everything should be based on results. And that's why I am kind of more of a fan of remote work, because I do think it allows people to kind of get their work done when they need, how and when they need to, and then still live their lives. But it only works when people have a mentality of, hey, I want to get results. Like, I did great working remotely because I treated my work like it was my own business. And so I work really, really hard if I had to put extra hours in. But then it's like articles like this, it either goes two ways. It's either the person got their work done and they were off, or they're just not getting their work done. They're just lazy. But I'm also curious how they even like found out that people were doing this, or like, are a lot of these companies monitoring people actively? Maybe it's something people need to be concerned about. Question for you, with your business, are you guys in the office? What's your setup?
I'm in office like 2 to 3 days a week. We have a very small, like, I'm in it. It's like a very small, what you think of as like almost a spare bedroom size. Yeah. It's a 2-desk. So it's me and, my co-founder, my brother. But our remote, like, our workforce is remote. Okay. So work from home. We just like to have an office to meet and collaborate. But yeah, it's flexible. Like, we bring them in every quarter for like a in-person thing.
What's been the biggest challenge with kind of building a remote first company that you've experienced?
I think speed. Like, for me, especially being on like the sales side, speed of which you are able to relay information is near instant when you're in person. Like, I hear things immediately. I can give feedback immediately, which I don't think is like the most deal breaking thing ever, but it adds up little over time when you're able to like give feedback that consistently that quick. Whereas like on remote, I might hear about something the next day or an hour later, or an email might have got sent that I would have said like, hey, maybe try this messaging, but it's already sent. I'm getting that. I'm getting the after effect of it. Right. And so little things like that. And what I noticed is when we bring them in person over that quarter, or like once a quarter, the collaboration level in person is just way higher. Like the energy of ideas, of sharing, all that stuff is way higher. You don't have to have that every day, which is why we're okay with remote. But I think it's important to at least do it once a quarter or so.
I had a guest on, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago, and she's in the Bay Area, and she required everybody to be on site. And I was like, oh, it must make it super hard to hire people as well. And she's like, no, actually, in this area, there's plenty of people who were willing to go into the office. And then obviously there's lots of guests I have on here that are fully remote. I've got one here because one of the next news stories is around remote work as well, and it's with a larger company. So I'm curious to get your take on this, because this is, I think, one of the challenges that bigger companies are facing, which is they were fully remote, everybody redistributed, and now they're wanting people back into the office. And you may have seen this one. I actually reported on it as well for anyone who's watching. I reported on the original story when it came out. I don't know, this was like 2 or 3 months ago. But this is, and I don't know, if you follow this channel on TikTok, this guy's hilarious.
This is new to me.
All right, so this is the corporate escapee. What a legend. And this screenshot kind of makes him look a little high, but that's okay. But the headline says the employees strike back. So this is from the corporate escape on TikTok. Brett Traynor is his name. And the headline in the video says 60,000 Dell employees say no to the return to office mandate. So let's hear what Brett's got to say.
How about this? The employees actually strike back and tell Dell Technologies what they can do with the return to office mandate. And there's so much or so little good news for Gen X, corporate Gen Xers. I think this actually qualifies. A couple people sent me this story, which I'll post here. You can see the headline. Almost half of Dell's full-time workforce has rejected the company's return to office policy. And for context, I think Dell's got about 120,000 employees. So that's 60,000 of them told Dell that they're going to remain remote. They don't want to come back to the office. And you think maybe that's not that big of a deal. But if you would have saw one of my earlier videos where I talked about Dell's return to office policy, basically they want you in the office 3 days a week. And they've got a color-coded system that the chief operating officer is actually reviewing. And if you choose not to come back to the office, or in this case, many of the employees were given the option if they want to stay remote, they forfeit one, they're no longer eligible for promotions. They're not eligible for applying for any other positions within Dell, and they're not eligible for any raises.
Wow.
Any raises they were actually giving, but basically they stopped their career at Dell, and 60,000 people, instead of going back to the office, basically said, nope, we're going to stick with remote. So, I think Dell's backed themselves into a corner here. That's probably some really good people that are going to be ineligible to do any movements. So I'm going to be super curious to see where this goes. But it just tells you the current state that this is a victory for employees. I'm not sure it is, because they're forfeiting any potential career movement. But again, I thought it was super telling of, all these employers want people back, and employees are saying, no, we want balance. We want quality of life. So
I'm going to stop that, because he kind of goes on and says the same thing a couple times, probably to monetize on TikTok. So smart move. But yeah, so basically, that was it. Dell basically said, hey, we're not going to give you any promotions. You're not going to be able to apply to any other internal jobs. Basically, your career is over with us if you choose to stay working remote. And I saw the news article on this as well. A lot of the people were just saying, hey, it's better life balance. I get to pick my schedule. Obviously, we all know the perks of working remotely for employees. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts with making a mandate like that? Like, Dell's a huge company. They're going to be in the news, and they're basically saying, hey, you're not going to grow anymore at our company if you work fully remote. Thoughts on that strategy for bringing people back to the office?
I hate that one. That's why that one might be the worst I've seen. Like, I've never seen it be like, basically, I've seen the comeback. Like, come back.
I know.
And that's it, right? I'd rather he had just done that. Like, either you come back or you're not part of the company. But you're saying, like, come back, or you can basically be a zombie at Dell, essentially. Is like
they're like encouraging people to quietly quit.
Yeah. I'm like, why would you hold on to that? Like I think any company that's like doing the whole like shift back kind of mentality needs to be prepared to go into a huge recruiting swing. It's just real. Like you need to be prepared for half of your team to quit. That should be what the plan is. Not we're going to keep them, but we're going to basically make them feel like trash to our company, and we're going to treat them like such. I think that's awful.
Yeah, I think the thing
seems like a losing strategy.
And the thing which surprised me is like, aren't promotions supposed to be on like the quality of work you've done, your results, things that actually matter, not where you do the work from. But I think last year too, Amazon they made the headlines when they were like, come back to the office or quit, which I actually thought was fair enough, because I'm like, hey, if you want people back in the office and they don't want to do it, then fair enough. Then they can quit. I think a real big challenge right now is we are in an employer market, and we talked about it earlier with the nursing roles and healthcare roles and manufacturing, a lot of those high volume positions. There's a shortage of workers, which produces hiring and demand for that talent because it's in a shortage, right? And in the other swing, corporate roles, it's not like that. Like these corporate roles, there's a lot more candidates on the market for these jobs. And I think companies know that, and they know that people are afraid to jump ship. But the challenge happens like as that starts to change and as more and more companies look to grow again with these corporate positions, which will happen at some point because it's a market. What happens then? Like, do companies then go back and say, actually, no, everything's remote because it's easier for us to recruit? And I think that's going to be telling and a challenge for companies. You got to kind of stick with your guns with some of these. So
you got to stand on it. Like, I think that's like the issue. And I get it. Everyone had to go remote for COVID. So I guess I can't blame them. But if you were going to switch, like if you knew that you weren't going to be a remote first culture, I feel like it shouldn't be happening in 2024 when we're switching back. Like that should have been switched back, in my opinion. But the other piece to me too that I've struggled with it, even when I've talked about like, jokingly, I talked with my team about doing in person instead. Like, what would you guys do if like we made you, but like
forced you back
we're not
to the
doing remote work, right? They're like, I'd quit. They literally straight up tell us like they're like, I would find another job.
Interesting.
And we're talking about a company that I'm trying to like have no bias, but like we have people that are very happy to work at QualiFI. Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
And it does not matter. Like that piece of convenience is really important. And I think the other piece is like, if you're not able to show people what the reason is that they would be in person, like what that thing is that is like so crucial that you have to be here.
Exactly.
Then they're not going to do it. Cause like there's so many stories about companies doing the mandate. And then I was reading it the other day. It's like, I've got mandated back in. Now I'm fighting for phone booths. I'm fighting for desk space, and I'm doing no meetings that are productive. Like, well, what's the point of that? You know what I mean?
No, that is the challenge, right? You have to create a reason and for it to make sense for people. And I think and that's a challenge because it really then makes you question, well, why do we actually want people in? And I think saying, I'm with you where like collaboration and being in people, there's a different energy. I'm totally with you there. But I think in order to get people in regularly, it's creating that case for them, that business case for them, not even for you, like for them, like why do they need to be back? And again, it's easier during this market because I know a lot of people are worried. And I talk about the brutal job market all the time. Those videos go viral because a lot of people are feeling it. So I don't think people are willing to quit in this moment. They'll definitely start looking for the jobs, but I don't think they're willing to quit. But as soon as you start getting a couple of recruiters in your inbox saying, recruiters like me saying, hey, I got a remote job that's, $90K, people would take it. Curious here, I'm gonna switch directions a little bit. This article I saw, this was on June 25th. So this was posted this morning. Actually had a conversation with an HR leader. I was in a conversation with an HR leader around this. And for some reason, I ended up doing a poll on LinkedIn around this topic. But this is something which the article surprised me. And I'll show you the article and then we'll take a look at my poll. But this article is claiming that political conversations at work may seem risky. Well, this is what the headline says. Political conversations at work may seem risky, but stifling them is too. And then in the image, it's got pro-Israel, and then it's got Gaza on there as well. So it's that's what they're circulating this conversation around, which is not what my poll was about. But they're basically claiming that people want to feel like the workplace gets them and understands them. And so when you have issues of social injustice, inequality, or political divides, especially as we're entering political season, those differences in opinions can escalate and cause conflicts. But basically, they're basically saying that having the conversation needs to happen, and you need to have limits with those conversations. And so I'll switch the screen here, and I'll show you this poll that I did. And I can't believe the timing on this either, because I just did this poll randomly on Saturday. Based on an HR, I went to an HR meeting recently, and one of the leaders there was like, yeah, we're thinking about how we approach the election. And, the election's obviously super polarizing because people are at the poll. And so I did a poll about the poll being polarizing. But basically, he was talking about like, how do we have these conversations? And I just thought, I wonder what people on LinkedIn would think about political conversations. So I said, the question I asked, and again, these LinkedIn polls are never perfect, right? It's hard to ask the right question. But I just said, should companies encourage employees to talk about politics? And we get 2,400 votes. It seems like a good amount of people. And 89% of people said no. 11% of people said yes. And then if you go down the comments, which you can go to if you go to my page and you go to recent activity, you can see this poll yourself and even leave a comment. But people are saying things like leave out the politics and encourage employees to have calm discussions on philosophy instead. You're there to do a job and get paid for it, not to turn your workplace into a protest movement. Someone said no, but they should encourage voting regardless of your politics. Someone else said hard no, this is too divisive. So a lot of people in the comments were saying no. So I'm curious, as a company leader, someone who's running a company, what are your thoughts on how you kind of approach conversations around, politics and social issues that are going on? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's tough.
Give me the right answer. Just kidding.
Yeah, right. I think I agree with like not encouraging it.
Okay.
Allowing it is different. I think if it happens organically and it's just becomes a conversation, I'm not going to be like, hey, no, But I think the challenge for me as a leader is I have my own belief, right? So then when I encourage, I'm coming in no matter what with a bias.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to encourage one direction or the other, probably a little bit. And I think that's the risk. And then you talk about most companies in America, the leadership is conservatively white. And so then you have that issue. Like then there's going to be people, well, one, it's going to be leaning pretty heavily one direction, but then there's going to be people that feel left out. And I think that's a risk as well, or feel like the enemy, whatever it is. Like you're creating, I think the risk side is like you're creating enemies within a company, and that's never good for culture. So I think that is why I would say not to encourage it. But I'll also say this, when the George Floyd situation happened, we talked about it. Like I shared my feelings on it openly, and I wanted to, because I thought it was important. And I think that's where it gets interesting, because it's important to me. It might not be important to everyone else, but I think in that moment, it probably was pretty important to everyone else. But there's those situations like that where you're talking about like death or, wrongful things happen to somebody. And there's perspective that I think people are kind of seeking without saying it, and being willing to give that as a leader, I think is important. But that's a bias that I carry, honestly. Like I'm a Black founder. I'm a Black man in America. Like I carry a bias that like, I'm going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Like, so that might be unfair, honestly, because again, like a white male might feel, I don't know, something's wrong in the world, but might not feel as comfortable talking about it because it might be viewed differently. So I definitely get that there's like dynamics for every different person that are tough. So that's why I say like, yeah, I'd probably not encourage it, but I think being willing to have hard conversations is important in anywhere. Political is just like one of those things. Like it is like someone said in your comments, like it's so polarizing that you're going to.
Yeah. It's like divisive, right? I mean,
yeah. Shouldn't be that way, but
no. And I think it's tough because I think, there may even be people who will even want to say things which they're not 100% behind because they want to appear a certain way, or maybe they don't want to appear a certain way. it's really tough. And I think that the perspective that the leader was coming from, I think maybe the correct way that he put it was around just like creating space for conversations and wanting to not necessarily encourage it, but just allowing a space within the team to be able to have conversations. But it's interesting because I know a lot of this is something that brands in general really face a challenge with is, making statements. And I remember George Floyd, everything that happened with George Floyd was a perfect example of this, because I think a lot of brands spoke up, some brands didn't, but then everybody notices who does and who doesn't. And then since then, I think there's been a couple of other things that have happened where companies have spoken up, but I've seen a big decline in that. Actually, I've seen a big decline in companies kind of making statements around really, anything. So, but as it seems like people want brands to maybe
to do it.
To do it. Yeah. So it's this weird.
Yeah.
People want it, but they don't want it,
I think it's hard for brands to do it because it's either two things. The leadership doesn't believe it. Like, because at the end of the day, I bet you I won't say 80%, that's probably high, but like a good percentage of brands that put out stuff, their leadership probably disagrees with it on a personal level.
Yeah.
Like I would imagine, because I'm guessing who's leadership, like who is the leadership in this country.
Yeah.
A lot of those statements probably don't resonate, but they make money.
Well, exactly.
So like, money is the thing that drives everything for these people. So they're willing to do that at the expense of their own personal belief. But that also is why I believe a lot of these statements don't follow through.
Yeah.
For example, when George Floyd happened, me and Torrin talked about this on our podcast. Like when George Floyd happened, there was millions and millions and millions of dollars.
I think 56 million, he said. 56 million.
Yeah. And he didn't give me the result, but he said it's abysmal what the follow through has been, because it's always just momentary statements for attention. It's a PR play. 100%. And that's the thing, is like, hey, we can get attention right now. This is our opportunity to, yes, we support what's happening, but in reality, we support our company and the opportunity that we have to make the Black community like us more. But then what they forget is the fact that it requires follow through. And I think maybe that's why brands aren't doing it as much, because they're learning their lesson that they can't follow through on stuff too.
Yeah, well, we did see it with I think Pride Month this month. BMW, they're a good example. They had like the color, like the colors on their logo on everywhere except certain parts of I don't know
that
where
was
it was,
wild,
like Eastern Asia or something.
The Twitter.
Yeah. And then it's logos, they got heat for that. And they're like, well, in that country, it just doesn't fly. And it's just like, and that's my whole thing is when this is where I really kind of do with a lot of my content. I talk about like corporate culture kind of sometimes being just nonsense at a certain point, or like, a lot of it is, it is all about the money, and it's all about dollars. So sometimes it's like you do see messages and you're just like, okay, this is obvious. And then something like that happens and you're like, okay, well, you had the opportunity to draw your line in the sand and you drew the line in the sand. Clearly, can't really come back.
Because that could have been dope. Like that could have been like, oh, wow. Like
a big company saying
they
something.
Lose money in that country.
Yeah.
Lose money in that country, but you get double the money in other countries as a result of you taking a stance,
Yeah. It's a very similar thing, right? And I think if you're trying to bring these conversations into into your culture and your company, it's challenged. What are your thoughts where, I mean, they're basically saying in that article too, like a lot of people, are wanting this, but then I see that poll on LinkedIn and it seemed like it was anything but. So do you think that they're on board with where most people, or do you think that poll is more telling?
So reading your poll's comments is funny, because I'm reading for tone, and some of the tone feels like conservative tone. So here's my theory. My theory is those that are leaning conservative, and I'm just going to give it two teams right now. I know there's more than two teams. I'm personally independent, so I lean in the middle, or I don't lean at all, I guess. Anyways, so the conservative people, I'm guessing, would prefer we keep politics out of work. Like work is work. It is not a place for politics. People that wrote that article, though, I'm just guessing.
Yeah. I'm
guessing they lean more liberal. And liberals might want more conversation like this in work, because I think that if you think about like this, the big companies of the world, they're all mostly conservative people that run these companies. So the more the liberal voice can get in there and change things, the better in the liberals' mind. And so I'm guessing that's kind of why you see such a different view. But I don't know. That's just my theory as I was reading.
Yeah, and I could go in and look at like who voted yes and no. Probably not a good idea. And unfortunately on LinkedIn, I'm the only person that can see it. But yeah, I think I can understand that as well, and I can see why that would be. Yeah, well, look, I'm curious to hear from you guys too. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, you know what, politics and even just issues around social matters, social injustice, whether we should be just talking about that at work, and I would love to hear your take on that. And then if there's any HR leaders or leaders out there that have successfully made a space for this to happen, I'd love to hear you on that as well, and maybe we could even get you on the podcast. Well, the last story that we're going to look at is one that I thought was pretty interesting. This was from a couple of days ago. And the reason I think it's interesting is because the whole time I've been in recruitment, this has not been the case, but it's saying in this article, bad news for coders. So this is what the headline says: bad news for coders. The US is past peak software developer. And it shows this graph, which anyone who's watching this, you can obviously see this, but for anyone who isn't, basically it shows like 2018, the need for social developers, the need for software developers kind of reached an all-time high in 2020. And since then, it's just gone down and down and down. And there's this US software developer employment index, and it's a graph, and it shows basically it's down to, 60%, it looks like, or 80%. So basically, saying since 2022, there's just been less of a demand for software developers, which the whole time I've been in recruitment, the last, 10 years, software developers have been in high demand.
Right.
And so now they're saying like, the job opportunities, and it's got another graph that it shows like the job opportunities have just gone down and down and down as well. So curious, like, is that surprising? Is that something that even the clients you're working with are seeing? What are your thoughts with that position in particular?
Yeah, that's surprising for me. We don't work with any client, not any, but rare that we work with clients that hire software developers, but we have. And I think I'm surprised that it's that different. Like, that seems like a stark difference from 2 years ago. But I'm also like, maybe that has to do with like that's why these layoffs you hear about so many layoffs happening, and it's like that's part of it. But I don't know. I always thought that was the group that was getting not laid off.
Yeah,
a lot of the time.
That's what I thought too.
That's wild. And then I wonder too if these data, the charts of charts, data is data. I'm not going to argue against it, but I'm wondering if like sometimes you see something like this could happen where software developer is not the title anymore, but it's the same skill set. So like AI and its introduction, like prompt engineer or something like that. Like that's not really software development. It's just like being good at making a prompt or whatever, or data analytics, or just different things that are like software developer adjacent, same skill. Like these people are kind of floating into those jobs. I wonder if that's affecting it too. And like more of those jobs are popping up.
They said, instead of software engineering roles, class of 2024 have been applying to data science or data science analyst, computer hardware, information security, computer systems engineering, and an investment analyst roles as well. I would have thought maybe it's like you're saying, like that all that hiring that happened, like rolling up into 2020, all of that hiring, all that funding teams were getting, if there was just like an over demand, and then over the past few years, we're just seeing money's running out. People don't have as much, companies don't have as much money, and they're like, all right, we're going to cut the team, and that demand is just hasn't come back.
Yeah, I mean that we are right at the time of like when 2020's funding boomed, like money would kind of run out. Like the money is kind of like that's going away now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that tracks. It just seems crazy. Like I'm like, that's like the most everything I hear. Or maybe I'm like a year behind or something, but that's like the sought after role. That's like the role everyone thinks is safe.
I know. I know. Well, it's I think a lot of these positions now too, a lot of them are, it seems like a lot of things are getting outsourced. Obviously you have AI coming in there as well, which is just making everybody more efficient at their jobs. Interestingly enough,
I mean, outsourcing is attractive for sure.
Yeah. Well, and like, I think what I've been reading a lot recently around Gen Z in particular, actually going to skills trades. Like there's been this rising popularity with Gen Z and skills trades, which I'm guessing some of the companies you work with would fall under that in that category. Not sure for 100%, but
yeah,
it's really, really interesting. And I think, maybe some of that is all the hype around AI and then seeing this like corporate kind of meltdown with jobs. But there are a lot of Gen Z like, okay, why am I going to try and get a job in the office if those jobs don't even exist? But these HVAC jobs, the plumbing jobs, electrical jobs are everywhere. So I'm wondering if we'll see that shift.
Normal.
What did you say?
So let me go do something normal.
Yeah, well, if you can learn a trade and then you also have like you're kind of tech savvy and you know how to use some software for maybe scheduling or marketing or generating leads, massive opportunity. Because I know a lot of those businesses are owned by people who have been doing it for 25, 30 years and they got nice business, and nothing to take away from the business. But when it comes to marketing or generating leads or, really scaling those businesses, there's not always that skill set there, or there's not always like a modernization with just the tech that's available. Right. So I think if you're a Gen Z and you're technologically savvy and you can learn that trade and that hands-on, I don't know, there's a lot of opportunity there.
I agree with that.
But they also got to make the cultures better. And it's like you said with healthcare, biggest thing I see in healthcare is just those work cultures are just brutal. And it's just like, even trying to staff, I was trying to staff like registered nurses for a while. And it was just like, you just talk to some of the nurses and they're just treated so badly. And it's not like anyone's fault necessarily, but it's just like, those are just tough environments and you get tough shifts. And I'd be like, all right, well, can we bring them in at like a day shift? No, they got to be third shift for 2 years. And you're just like,
no, we don't want them at all.
No, that's not a good selling point. No one wants that. But,
right.
Any final thoughts here? Anything, what's the most surprising topic that we covered today in your mind?
Surprising is that last one.
Yeah.
I think the most important one is the middle one, which is the political one.
Yeah.
I think that's like super, I could see both sides of the coin. I've done both sides of the coin. But I think what I was going to say with that one is like, if everyone just starts with the whole idea that both sides suck, I think we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah.
Like let's not pretend that these people are doing everything right. And like, well, we're all human and maybe we can get somewhere then.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Well, that's what actually the closing thing that this article says, shed your ego. That so often people enter these discussions with the goal of changing someone's mind. Acting differently requires giving up ego because with ego comes a desire to be right. When the ego gets in there, that's when people get really, really entrenched. So that's basically, that's basically what it is. It's humility, and and look, this isn't just the workplace; it's just in general, right? It's all over the place nowadays, and it's easy for everybody to think they're right about everything. And I don't run into too many people that have enough humility to say, okay, hey, I might be open to other things or open to even conversation. So, well, look, where can people find you? Where can people find out about QualiFI?
Yeah, I would say the easiest one is going to my LinkedIn. I think I'm /Devyn Mikell, nice and easy. And then if you want a glimpse into my personal life, because I feel like everyone says LinkedIn, follow me on Instagram, Devyn.Mikell.
I was trying to find you on Instagram. I tagged QualiFI when
I have like 3.
There we go.
One of them is real.
All right, all the real recruiters can find you. And then what events are you going to? Anything upcoming where people can meet you?
Oh yeah, we'll be at RecFest.
RecFest, shout out to RecFest
in September.
Awesome.
We're having a boat party, so if you want to get on the boat,
let's go.
Make sure you let me know.
Love that.
Yeah, so make sure you let me know. It's a 90s themed boat party, so we're gonna have like the Will Smith vibes.
Basically. Yeah. Love that.
Fresh Prince vibes.
Love that.
Yeah.
Awesome, Devyn. Well, hey, thank you so much for the time. And then, guys, if you have questions, you've got thoughts on any of the topics that we've discussed, there's 2 ways that you can get a hold of me. Number 1, you can find me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request, and we can get a DM going. And number 2, if you go to the www.therealistrecruiter.com, you can sign up for the podcast newsletter, join 4,000 other people who are joined up for that newsletter, and you can actually reach me directly through the newsletter. So looking forward to seeing you guys. And if you want to be a guest on the show, you want to get involved in the show, again, reach out to me, www.therealistrecruiter.com. Until next week, guys, have a good rest of the week. And I'm crossing my fingers that England win this game, even though they're not winning right now. So, Devyn, thanks again, man. And appreciate everybody out there for listening.